is?
Oh, CIC?
Yeah.
Citizenship and Immigration Canada. CIC is an old name, and it stands for Citizenship and Immigration Canada. The new name is IRCC, or Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. Okay, so CIC is a very common, popular name, which is used for a while. Okay, this is a federal agency which takes care of permanent residence application and also applications of other types of visas, like even the study permit. So when a student applies for a study permit to study in Canada, study permit or a student visa, they apply through this department, IRCC. So IRCC mans the immigration offices across the world through their network of Canadian High Commissions and Canadian embassies.
Okay. Interesting. Now, Canada has different intakes, right, for students. So, do you know exactly when they are?
Yeah, Canadian universities and colleges typically have one major intake. And I think you should know that when you started college, when did you start that?
That was in September.
Exactly. So September is the main intake for all colleges across Canada. Now, some of them have additional intakes, which may be in, they have additional intakes in January, and some of them even in May, June. Most master's program begins in September, and most Canadian courses begin in September. So September is the major intake. Okay, so typically colleges and universities close their admissions at least 6 months prior to an intake. Okay, so students must be prepared to apply in advance so that they can take advantage of the highly sourced courses, Canadian courses, where Canadian students study. Okay, so one thing which we may also want to think is, if there are places, developing nations, for example, where they finish their year in April, it's very unlikely that they can take a course in September, right? Because it is less than 6 months.
Yes.
So they normally take it in January of the following year or September of the following year.
Oh. Awesome. Now, can you explain what exactly the pre-departure briefing is and what it does?
Oh yeah, we are discussing about the Pollence's pre-departure briefing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pastoral program. The pre-departure service is also termed as pastoral services. It comes under pastoral services in Pollence's because Pollence's is a Canadian company, right? And we have branches in several parts of the world. We ensure that students coming through Pollence's prepares for permanent residence. So we prepare them for permanent residence even before they leave their home country. Now, Pollence's has a meeting before the student leaves their home country. It's just a get-together, and we talk possibly in a webinar type of situation. And we update them with information as to what they should do before they leave Canada, before they leave their home country to come to Canada. And also we prepare for their next meeting after they come to Canada. We also have the first initial meeting on approaches to permanent residency.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't seen many companies that offer that.
Yeah, very rarely.
Yeah.
Right, but we prepare our clients for permanent residence, and we start it even before they leave their home country.
That's great. What are some courses that you would recommend international students take when they come to Canada?
The type of courses they should take in Canada? First of all, the type of institution matter. Okay, they have to choose the right institution to study in Canada so that they get their PGWP. Not all institutions have that option for PGWP. But what are the good courses? Well, one thing about studying in Canada and wanting to settle here, you possibly can choose from a wide variety of courses in any field, for that matter. because most courses a student takes here have good scope of employment,
Yes.
right? Because diploma courses are highly, they're employment driven. However, some courses are focused on faster employment options, and these are to be discussed with the Paulin's student council in Canada. Now, when an agent counsels a student, say for example, an agent counseling a student in India, will always discuss perspective based on the Indian situation.
Yes.
But when they speak to a counselor from Canada, the perspective is based on the Canadian system, and that is why the student is able to get a better feedback
Yeah.
or better information on the students here. So you will be talking to some of the students when they call. Our Canadian counselors can provide those students with a better understanding on approaches in Canada. If I'll give you an example. It is sometimes better to do a technical course or a course in relation to a job. And an example is, say, for example, automobile technician's course. If mechanical engineering is on the student's mind, or a personal support worker for an international nurse, these courses offer extremely good job potential, and therefore their permanent residence approach can be easier. Permanent residence is dependent on job.
Yeah.
Okay. Personal support worker is a good course for a nurse, but it is a step or two below a registered nurse. So if you are a registered nurse, you may want to get your nursing registration done even as a student, so that you can begin working as a registered nurse immediately after your course when you are on a work permit. Now, Paulin's has an entire department in Vancouver, in Canada, to take care of nursing opportunities for international nurses. Okay, it's an extremely popular department. Likewise, there are approaches for IT personnel, physiotherapists, and many other professionals.
Awesome.
So it depends, the course depends on what your professional background is, if you have a professional background, or what your inclination is. What do you think you should do?
Yes. Should students in Canada do a master's program or a diploma?
Oh, should they do a master's or a diploma program? Very common question, especially from countries like India and the Philippines. Very common, where every parent wants their child to do their masters. They want their child to do their masters. So this is a common question. Now, doing a masters in Canada is expensive. University education is very expensive. Therefore, please keep this in mind. If you want to do a master's program, then you must check these factors. One, can you afford it? Check out the fees of master's program and find out if you can afford it. If you cannot afford it, or it's going to be a huge financial burden on your head, try doing a diploma. Number two, do you have good academic scores? Taking masters is risky. If you fail, you are going to lose your opportunity for permanent residence because you are not going to get your work permit. So unless you have high scores in your current education, you may not want to think about masters. Number three, do you have good English? Do you have 7 or more in IELTS? Then doing masters may be a good option. If you have less English scores, then keeping up with the curriculum and the classes would be a challenge. Try not to take this risk. If you are so keen on masters, then improve your language scores, which could make doing masters manageable. Number 4, master's programs are sometimes very favorable for permanent residence applications. Paulinsis has an excellent master's program in teaching, which is only a 14-month course. And when completed, you can apply for permanent residence through the PNP, Provincial Nomination Program, without any work experience. If you want to know more details, just email Jason and he will update you on this very unique program. Now that you know if you want to do masters or not, it is much easier to decide on a diploma program. Okay, first consider masters, but check the points which I have told you, and then you can then decide on diploma. Please visit the Student Herald page for updates, and we frequently update you whenever some good opportunities arise or when some challenges arise.
So just in summary, like doing masters or diploma depends on, for one, your financial capacity, your language skills, and your current education, right? Diplomas are excellent programs in Canada, and they offer really good pathway to permanent residence if you can manage the approach correctly, if I'm right. But take a look at thestudentherald.com for more info. All right? Yeah, make sure you do your research correctly.